How many times you've heard about bad habits, even in my videos? If you watch these types of videos or just check channels which give online advices, you must have stumbled upon a video talking about bad habits or habits in general. You've been told all the time that you need to eliminate those habits that stop you from achieving your goals or greatness. And to be fair, most of them really do. Like smoking of any kind is harmful. There is no pros to that. And you may argue that smoking relieves stress or makes you relax more. If you think it that way, you're part of the reason I'd like to have smoking banned in public, because smoking not only is it harmful to you, but most smokers don't give a damn about people next to them. As a matter of fact, they smoke right to your face, and there's very few things that enrage me more than that. But we're not talking about these bad habits. We're talking about habits that are snubbed by health maxers or red pill YouTubers, that do have a kind of progress slowdown, but also have a function for you that might contribute to your mental well-being, if dosed correctly. The most talked about advice is quitting porn. There's absolutely no doubt that it is harmful and quitting is the best option, since for those guys who never had a relationship before, they'll think having sex with a girl is done like in the videos, and consequently think of every girl they see with that kind of shame that gives off, "I'll never be able to pull any girls" energy, which girls perceive. And for those guys, my only advice is that you quit porn and don't masturbate until you're able to pull yourself in a date. Even better if you save it for when you actually have an intercourse with her. And for those guys, my only advice is that you quit porn and don't masturbate until you're able to put yourself in a date. Even better if you save it for when you actually have an intercourse with her. On the other hand, if guys who have experienced at least once having a relationship or having sex a couple of times, they won't be affected too much if they don't overdo it, of course. Anyways, not watching it is the better outcome. And if you're a virgin, it's better not to even think about porn at all. The second most argued advice is video games. Now, this is an important part for me, because after watching all these online videos that talked about quitting video games, I tried to quit them, and after maybe a week or two, I ended up playing again, since I either played video games or scrolled through my phone. So I decided maybe there were just some adjustments to be made. If you play video games all day long and or scroll through your phone, then it is obvious that you need to at least reduce dramatically the amount of hours you spend throughout your day on playing video games. I think that if you're not too interested in playing video games on a certain day, don't do it. Do something more productive instead. And what is productive? That'll be an argument for another video. So what I'm personally doing right now is playing a couple of hours, like 2 to 4 hours a day, which is actually a lot. But sometimes, since I have stuff to do, there are days where I don't play at all. And I think that allows you to relax a little and cool down from all the stress of the day. Of course, I suggest you stay away from multiplayer games that are competitive. That would only stress you more, so enjoy games that are either single player or are at least enjoyable. Don't try quitting video games suddenly, because if you're like me, you'll only last a couple of weeks and the will to play video games comes always back. And if it actually were bad, then I'd say yeah, resist the urge, but since we're talking about relaxing a little after a hot day, then rest yourself. Either way, if you're not playing video games and are instead scrolling on the phone, that doesn't make it better. On the contrary, it may even make it worse. And here comes the other bad habit. Social media. There's no doubt that social media has changed the world of communication, and certainly the entertainment, making every platform addictive in such a way that you think to yourself, one less video and then I turn it off. And then you find yourself 3 hours later with less hours of sleep available and regret everything. Don't get me wrong, social media has and will continue to be a fascinating way to communicate with people and allow creators to even earn enough to sustain themselves, and in some cases, even live like kings or queens. The problem with everything in life is the quantity. There is a saying, the dose makes the poison. And I think you've heard it quite some times by now. Because it is true. Everything, if exaggerated, causes harm. Even water, a resource that every living animal and plant needs to survive and is composed of. And it also may be the cause of death if taken too much. Of course, depending on what you take, the margin of intake may be different. But it also applies to non-physical stuff such as social media, which may be even productive if used correctly and for not too long. But like everything addictive, you need to make sure you don't get sucked in the consuming loop, basically. So make sure you use social media for not too long and search for quality entertainment if you're bored. Last problem with social media is the information you take from the videos, including mine. So always make sure to research the information if it's objectively true or false. And don't believe right away any advice that has even a little bit of subjectivity to it. Make sure you can first see if it may have worked for somebody you know. And if you can't, think before applying the advice, of course. Still, don't make it as an excuse to cope and procrastinate the work if you have to do now. If, of course, the advice is about productivity and work. Now let's talk about fitness and health, shall we? How many of you have problem dieting? I guess most of you who have tried dieting before haven't got much result, haven't you? In this argument in particular, I'm going to have to put a disclaimer, of course. I'm not a nutritionist, so don't take my advice for granted and make your own researches. The major problem of dieting is that you find yourself craving for those things that are considered junk food. And even if you resist the urge initially, you'll end up actually eating it anyway. Maybe you've tried substituting a cookie with a banana and ended up eating the banana and the cookie. Might as well just eat the cookie at this point. The solution that I wanted to provide you is to follow whatever diet you're following and allow yourself one small treat per day, so that at least it won't be too hard to resist. Another thing that I found being a problem is eating gluten. Not because I'm intolerant, or maybe I am, I don't know for certain, but because every time I eat gluten, for example, bread, pizza, pasta, it gets harder to lose weight. So if you're like me and eat bread almost every dish, then you might need to remove the bread and only eat the meat, for example. It may seem almost useless since bread actually satiates you. And of course, it's better to eat bread than pizza. But if you can also avoid bread, it would be perfect. If your diet is more inclined on receiving as much vitamins, fibers, or omega-3, for example, and so on, then you have to ask my brother or Gemini. And they will tell you that the best thing to do is either to take supplements externally through either powder or compresses, or just spend a shit ton of money on food. Needless to say, if your goal is to lose weight, which I guess it is most probably, then the biggest advice I can give to you is to work out. There's a very few things that don't need a debate on, and working out intelligently is one of them. And by that, I mean that you know what you're doing, so that when you, for example, do a squat, you do it with the right technique and don't end up hurting yourself. Also, don't forget to do cardio at least 3 times a week, and adjust it based on your level of fitness, of course. If you already work out but haven't run a single time in your life, then I suggest you do a modest 1 kilometer run, which is like a little more than a half a mile. And when you've adapted to it, go for a 3 kilometer run, or a little less than 2 miles for my Western friends, and continue to adapt more and more. Before running, I suggest you prepare your playlist so that it gives you a little energy to run. And don't forget, of course, to stretch, so that you don't hurt yourself. And here comes the most controversial bad habit that I ever heard of, and that's music. The first time that I've heard music as being a bad habit and something you had to remove from your life is when I actually stopped for a moment and reconsidered everything I've heard up until that point. I listen to music very often, and yes, it might distract you if you're working or doing anything that requires your concentration. But it being considered as cheap dopamine is one of the things I can't tolerate, because music has existed almost forever by now. It is used by animals to attract females. It is used by companies and bars to attract more customers and to make their experience more enjoyable, since music was born to be attractive. With that, I'm not saying it is okay for you to listen to music from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. And sometimes I've even heard people listen to music while sleeping. Of course, there's no doubt that it is going too far that way. But listening when you want to relax or want to have a workout, or even while driving, which is the best part for me. As long as it doesn't distract me or you from driving, if it applies to you too, it's perfectly fine, and I even suggest you listen to music more often. Of course, only if you're in the mood, naturally. This was the end point for me to take online advices as gold and actually rethink everything I've heard before applying it. So should you. Once I was asked if I'd prefer a world without music or a world without movies. For me, it was a no-brainer. Like, of course I prefer a world without movies. I just don't see myself in a world where music doesn't exist. Just to give you a perspective on how much I love music. This also comes from the fact that my grandpa was a guitar player. Not for any band, but he loved to play guitar as a hobby. And it transmitted to me the passion. So I sometimes play guitar when no one's around the house, which is almost never the case. And that is going to be the main point of my next video. So labeling music as a bad habit is just pure bullshit to me. If, of course, like everything I've said before, not exaggerated. For the last one, I don't have much to say, which is drinking alcohol. The less you drink, the better. Of course, if there are some events where you are expected to drink like champagne or Prosecco, then of course a single glass won't be life-changing. But even then you can refuse politely and not drink at all. So if you don't like drinking, just don't do it. There is no point in it, and it's just going to make your liver worse if you drink too much. Although it may boost temporarily your confidence in a social event or when approaching a girl, I suggest you don't drink and boost the confidence naturally. These were the most labeled bad habits that came up to my mind. Let me know what other habits that are considered bad you've heard before, and if you want to share them with me, write them in the comments. Also, let me know what you think of these bad habits that you heard in this video and how you deal with them. Don't forget to subscribe if you like my content, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to reach for happiness.